Like that. Like that. Oh, nice. So I did it. Great. Probably not in the head. It'd be nice to see. Yes. If not, I say, all right, we're going to have a rotation.
Well, gentlemen, real quick, before Dan starts up, just a reminder, if you haven't already been able to tell, because I've got cameras going right now, all of these 3 sessions that are going on today, I'm recording them, and then within the next 24 to 48 hours, I'm going to put them on a unlisted YouTube folder or something like that. So that, and I'll send that link out to everybody that's in this room within the next couple of days, so that you have access and you can go back to all of the sessions that you had here today. And so I know, what Dan's going to do sometimes. If any of you guys are in the back, if he's getting down on the floor right here doing, form and technique, if you want to stand up to be able to see it, that's great. But we do have it on camera, and you can go back and see a little bit better view of it after the fact.
Awesome.
Whenever you're ready.
Alrighty, what's going on, fellas? My name is Dan O'Connell. I grew up in Winchester, Massachusetts, played for Winchester Youth Lacrosse. Didn't do any club lacrosse or anything like that, so just, youth lacrosse all the way up. Ended up playing at Holy Cross, graduated in 2020. Did a graduate year of lacrosse at Duke University, so local guy just right down the street is where I played in college. A little background on my career: I grew up mostly playing midfield, and then when I got to college, we needed a face-off guy, and I had taken some face-offs in high school, but didn't really have any specialty, so had to pick up the position on the fly. And I say that because I think it's pretty valuable for any of you coaches just to kind of realize that the face-off position, I know it can be a little bit daunting, a little bit unorthodox if you're a traditional midfielder or something like that, but it can be picked up pretty easily. So I'm here today to obviously put you guys through that. Probably go about 20, 30 minutes. I was asking them to put me at the front of the schedule, but I hear this is the end of the day, so I'll try to keep you guys engaged. Please, as I go along, just think of any questions that you might have at the end. I'll obviously stop at the end for questions, but please, at any point, jump in. If I'm not explaining something as well as I should be, or if it's not really connecting, I'm happy to stop and slow it down and walk through it. I like to figure the face-off in 3 ways. The first move, the second move, and the third move. That's really what we're working towards in terms of securing the clamp and gaining possession. So I'd like to start off and walk us through 3 different things. The first thing's going to be the basics, okay, just the basics of facing off. The second is the face-off itself, and then the third being kind of the extras, I like to call it, like wing play, ground balls, and things like that. So just starting off with the basics. Our grip. Okay, so it used to be that we had that motorcycle grip, like you're riding a motorcycle, and now that that's been outlawed, they call it the neutral grip. So you're standing up, whereas normally most guys would go on the knee, but now it's neutral, or standing neutral grip, rather. So just for your grip, it's pretty, it's pretty unique. Guys have a unique, or have a preference, rather, in terms of where they want their left hand, but most importantly, our right hand is as far as we can get it up towards that plastic without touching the stick. Okay, that gives us the most leverage, the most strength, the most power when we're trying to secure that ball. Basic physics, if I'm down here, I'm not as strong, and as we'll get into, strength and power is definitely an element of face-offs, and that's really how we can get that top edge to sink under our opponents. So grip, right, I got my hand under the stick, hand as close to the plastic as I can get it. Left hand varies, but it probably want it halfway down the stick all the way down, okay? Anywhere from there, that's perfect. So, our stance. If I have a line drawn right here, right, we face off on that line, on that midline, I want my left foot up to that line, okay? I want my right foot as close as I can to my right hand, but it has to be a little bit back off that line, right? I can't, rest my hand on top of my stick. So I got my left foot up to that line. I got my right foot pretty close to my right hand, okay? I'm squatting down. My weight is pointed onto my toes, and my chest is over that line, okay? I think one of the biggest problems that we see with some of the younger guys is they sit back on their heels, right? Like they're squatting, taking a dump, right? We want to be over and have our weight a little bit pointed towards our opponent and our toes pointed on a 45-degree angle, right? I like to have my belly button going towards the ball, my shoulders going into my opponent. Basic physics would tell you that if we're going and we want to make the most efficient path to the ball, I don't want my hands out here, stabbing away here. I don't want to be twisted. I want to be squared up. I'm strong. I'm driving into my opponent, okay? So that's our stance. I'd say another big thing that we see a lot of times with guys is, especially at the youth levels, is their legs are pretty far back and they have their weight on their hands, okay? So we want it to be that my hands come in between my knees and they drop down and they're pretty light. I can pick them up pretty easily, okay? The lighter they are, the faster they are on the whistle. So many kids are always asking, how do I get faster? How do I get faster? Lighten up on the stick a little bit, all right? And lighten up on the pressure. You should have most of your weight on your toes, leaning forward. That's really the basics of the stance and the grip, okay? Really important to kind of get that down in the early part. It's really the foundation that kind of builds upon facing off, and if your student, your player can't really pick that up, it's hard to really get into the most efficient path to the ball. Okay, so that's stance and grip. That's the basics. We got a question?
Yeah, just a question about leg or front arm, elbow inside the leg or outside. Is it preference, or I've seen it both ways, right? So I'm just wondering is there a preference there, or is there an actual advantage to going inside versus outside?
Absolutely. So thanks for pointing that out. Inside, all day. Okay. Your hands, both of those hands should come inside of my knees. That's pretty much non-negotiable. I see a lot of kids be outside, right? Just, this is not strong, it's not efficient, it's not coordinated. I see a lot of kids do that, and that's a mistake. I have yet to see anyone that we coach with at the Face-Off Factory, yet to see really anyone in college preach that. There's a couple guys in college you'll see that start their left foot a little bit back. We like to start it all the way up, but I'd say the biggest thing is dropping down, light on your hands pretty close to the line for the most part, and weight on our toes. Great question though, thanks for pointing that out. All right, so moving on to the face-off itself. Okay, so breaking it down in 3 ways. We just covered the basics, grip and stance. Now we're going to move into the face-off, and then the third part really being just kind of the extras and wing play and ground ball. So this is probably the most meat of the presentation, and really what guys will really want to, when you watch the college face-offs, when you watch the higher level face-offs, this is the real competition that's going on. So we have the first move, the second move, and the third move. All right, first move is definitely the most important part of the face-off, okay? If you are coached up to do the right things and you successfully win that first move, you should be winning at a 70% clip if you win that first move, okay? So really this is the most important part of the face-off. The name of the game is to really at the top edge to beat your opponents. Okay, if we're going for a clamp, we'll get into a little bit of a rake later and some other variations like that. But if you want to clamp the ball, which is what 90% of the face-off guys like to do, 90% of the time you're watching a face-off, that's what happens. You want to beat your top opponent's top edge to the ball, okay? You have a ball here, you have 2 sticks, they're both coming down at the same time. It's whoever can get that top edge under their opponents. Now, mechanically, the stick is strongest closest to my hand. So if you see my stick, it bends back pretty easily here, whereas here, it's so much harder to bend back. So we're moving, when we face off, we want to drive down the line and into our opponent, okay? So at the same time, when I'm clamping over that ball, I'm driving down that line, twisting my stick down to get that top edge over, and driving into my opponent. There's 3 aspects of that first move, right? Drive down that line. Why? Because the strongest part of the stick is here. If I don't drive down the line and I just twist my stick down, what's going to happen? I'm going to catch it at the top part of the stick. My stick's going to bend back. My opponent's going to drive down the line, have a stronger part of the stick go towards that ball, and when we meet up, he's just going to be stronger over the ball and beat me to the ball. Okay? So, first part of the first move, drive down that line. Second part, rotate those hands down. That's a lot of times what we see is something that is a real determinator of whether or not you're going to win the face-off, is whether or not you're able to twist and rotate your hands down, right? So a lot of times when we practice with some drills, we'll just work on the left hand only. I'll get into some drills at the end, right? But the left hand only twisting down, and then we'll do one-handed, the right hand only twisting down, really getting that motion to get that top edge to snap over the ball and hit the turf. Okay? So that's the second part. First part of the first move is drive down that line. Second part, drive over the ball. Third part is punching into your opponent and getting onto your toes. So I like to say bring my shoulders into the neutral column. Okay, when I coach guys, I say if I had a rope, right, I'm standing here, they're facing off here. I said, if I had 2 ropes attached to your shoulders and I pulled you in towards that ball and into the neutral column, that's what it should look like. So on that whistle, I'm driving down the line, I'm rotating my hands down, and I'm driving into the ball with my shoulders. There's 3 ways you can really diagnose that first move and see whether or not you can really troubleshoot your player and see what he's doing right or wrong on the first move with really 3 things to look for. The first thing would be exactly if they're not driving down the line, when they clamp the ball will be at the top of their stick, or in the middle or the top of that stick. When we clamp, right, if we had a ball, I want that ball to hit that ball stop on that clamp. Why? Once again, because we're driving to the strong part of the stick. So I'm driving down that line, trying to get that ball to hit the ball stop. Okay, the second thing is when we're taking the face off another way, we can diagnose or troubleshoot if someone's doing something wrong, is if they don't rotate that stick over. And what that'll look like on a loss is you pushing the ball into your opponent's stick. Okay? That stick will stay straight up in the air when they try to clamp that ball. That's another problem that we see that's pretty recurring. They're not rotating that stick down. Then the third thing would be is if they kind of miss the ball or they're back on their heels, just clamping like this, right? The third part of that first move is driving into that neutral column. Okay? So that's really the most important part of the face-off, the most important thing that we teach, driving down the line, rotating that stick down, and coming into the neutral column. Okay? That's the first part of facing off. That's the first move. Those are really the 3 tenets of it. Any questions on the first move?
I have to confess, I don't know the rules in this area real well. How far under 7, 8, 15? How far can they come into the partner? Can they be as physical they want, knock that guy off if he's back on his heels? Does anybody know?
You can't make contact with the player first. You have to play the clamp first, then you can engage. But you can't engage the player first.
Yeah.
You just can't jam the other guy.
Right. But if you're going through the motions, it's the 3 motions on that third motion, then he can be as physical.
Right.
He wants to be.
I think the idea would be, right, is if you're playing the ball, okay? So you can't take your helmet and launch as a spear into your opposing guy. You can't, on the first move, try to drive your shoulder and drive. I mean, first of all, I wouldn't even teach that.
Right.
But you can't do that.
But if it's part of the motion.
If you clamp in, right, you clamp in and you're here, right, that's what we're teaching, right? We're getting on our toes. Yep. We're driving our shoulders into the neutral column. And his head bumps into the other guy's shoulder, or the helmet's bumped for a second, that's fair game. I mean, in the college level, you'll see the right side of the helmet is all charred up by the end of the season because the guys are bang, bang, banging all year. I would imagine that that's not the case at the youth level, and it shouldn't be. But at the same time, I think if it's a natural motion and your player's trying to clamp and go into the ball, he's almost acting as if there's no opponent there. That's my understanding at that level that's fair game.
That's mine too. Just want to make sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
When do you start teaching like a jump or a rake? You were talking about that's going to be the next part, right?
Yeah, so I'll touch upon that. So I think probably the most valuable thing that we really teach is the clamp, right? I think that that's the bread and butter of becoming a successful face-off guy. Now, I'm sure a lot of coaches here are saying, well, I go against this kid in another town, and no matter what we do, this kid's going to clinics 5 days a week, and this opponent's kicking our tail. What do? I'll get into that in the back half of the presentation. But that's a great question. But I think for now, just sticking with the clamp, we'll go to second and third move, then we'll get to that third part, which is what to do when we're losing and things like that. And that's half the battle. I think that that's why they changed from knee down to the stand-up, is to make it more of a ground ball game. But absolutely. So moving on to second move. So second move, now we've clamped into the ball. 90% of the time, especially at the higher levels, I know we're coaching middle school, but even in the middle school, the sticks get tied up. Right? Every face-off guy would like to have 100% of the ball when they clamp in. Normally it's 60-40, 70-30, somewhere around there. Right? So that stick clamps and it meets up. Okay? So what we like to teach is a saying, once again, rule of 3, in, down, and around for that second move. In, down, and around. So when we tie up, the stick should look like this, right? They're probably 45-degree angle down towards the ground. Top edge rails are matched up against each other. Ideally, we have our stick, the ball is closer to the throat of the stick than the top, right? Because we've driven down that line. And what are we going to do from here? We're going to go in again, okay? Which is down that line again, into the opponent again, twist down, and then move around, okay? And that's what it turns into, right? You see that rotating, right? Guys are looking like that wrestler position. It looks like I like to, coach the younger guys and tell them they're looking like a frog, right? Going and driving around the ball. What they're really doing, the best guys are going in, down, and around. And then they're going in, down, and around, trying to twist that stick all the way down, trying to drive into the opponent again to get to the strong part of the stick, and then naturally just the angle takes you around the ball. Okay? What we're working towards with our legs is driving into the ball and trying to get as much weight on that right hand as we can. Right hand pressure is an important theme in the first, second, and third move. You want as much pressure on your right hand throughout the entirety of the face-off as you can, and the point of the second move is to try to get that stick to go from having 60, 70% of the ball to having 100%. And the way we do that is get as much right hand pressure to get that stick to go from here, right? There's tilted, 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 and then it slips, and I have 100% of the ball. Okay. So, that's the second move. Any questions on the second move? All right. Moving on to the third move. So once we have those first two moves down, we have 100% of the ball. You can see it, right? If this is the turf, the stick is completely clamped over the ball. I have 100% of the ball. All right? Once again, rule of 3. I have the ball completely clamped over. I'm going to do what we call kickstanding the ball. Okay? I get to my kickstand, I get to my tripod position. I'm here, I got 100% of the ball. I'm going to bring my butt end of my stick. All while I'm doing this, I have 100% right hand pressure. The stick does not come up. I have my weight all the way on my right hand. I bring the stick to the butt end, I bring the butt end of my stick to my belly button. That's number 1. That's the first part of the third move. Right hand pressures, right hand stays on the ground, left hand, butt end comes to the belly button. Second part, I hop my legs up and get my nose over the ball. This allows me, if I have a guy countering me, and my hands are away from here, my hands are away from my body, it's easy to pick my hands up, it's easy, the ball comes loose, way more often than it should, okay? What I'm doing is I'm getting over the ball. If someone wants to counter me from here, good luck, right? I have way more weight over the ball. I'm in a much stronger position. That's part 2. So stick to the belly button, feet hop. The third part, this is the drag, right? We struggle with this a lot of times in the youth levels in 2nd and 3rd grade because the kids aren't strong enough. By, you guys 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th? By this age, you guys should kind of have this down, should be able to kind of get this move. But I have to stick to my belly button, I'm hopping over the ball, and I drag and pop the ball up, okay? The reason we say we try to drag the ball out, gives the guy more control, allows more distance away from our opponent. But what we're doing is transferring that ball up into our stick, all right? We'll stick with the basics here. There's a number of different moves that we could get into, right? Exiting left, exiting right, exiting between the legs, drop step like a basketball move. Guys, get creative with it. I think the most important part, if you're dealing with beginners or you're even at that middle school level, is just hammering down one or two, right? I get here, either open my leg up, drop to my left, or I get here, rotate my hands, go to my right foot. So I got two ways. Or you can throw it between your legs, right? And then go pick the ball up. So that's 3 basic exits for that third move, right? Just to rehash it, I clamp, I got the ball, I got 100% of the ball. Left hand goes to the belly button, feet hop up, drag to my left foot, drag to my right foot, throw it between my legs, get out, okay? What we're trying to do is build separation between our opponent, because at that point we have the ball. All right, any questions on the third move? Okay, so that's first, second, third move, right? That's the face-off. That's really the most important part of clamping the ball. All right, so next we'll go into what I like to call the extras. Okay, raking, countering, what we're doing, what we're losing, wing play, ground balls. Okay, so I think a lot of times, especially when you get to some of the specialized kids who really start to get into the face-off, they can get really frustrated when they're losing the clamp. They say, Coach, I want to clamp the ball, I want to pop it out. That's what all the college guys do, that looks clean. I think you can make a pretty good living based off chasing the ball down, countering, shoveling, raking, right? You can be a pretty unorthodox face-off guy. Look at James Riley for Georgetown, All-American face-off guy. He's a scrappy, unorthodox guy that doesn't clamp the ball every single time. So there's definitely a case to be made for this being a really valuable aspect of the game, and especially when we're losing, this can kind of really even the gap. So I'd say first, we'll just talk about countering, right? Countering's pretty basic in my opinion. When we're losing, okay, we're getting beat off the clamp, you can tell your player, hey, you're losing, you're struggling, let's try to, work in some counters. Now, he can still go for the ball if he's tying the guy up for just a little bit, right, to, make him have to work for the ball a little bit, get our wings in. But really what we're doing is once your player has realized that he's lost that ball, okay, he's not getting it. The other opponent's got 90%, 100% of that ball, right? He's pretty much about to get his top edge all the way to that turf. Okay, I like to do 2 things. First, we're going to get my belly button to his face mask, okay? What I'm doing here is closing space, okay? You want to make it very uncomfortable for the guy to have to exit, right? When we get to that third move, if my opponent's, 2 yards away from me, I can go anywhere I want. I feel no pressure. If I'm crowded and he's got his belly button, right? If my helmet's right here, he's got his belly button to my helmet, right? I'm not going to have a coach come up and demonstrate. It'd be a little bit of an awkward position, okay? But you can kind of see what I'm saying here. I'm trying to close space, get my groin, my belly button, whatever, into his helmet, right? His helmet's right here, and close space, okay? I'm also shifting to my right, naturally, to get my belly button to his face mask. Why? Because a lot of coaches will say, follow the butt end, right? That can really tell you. A lot of the high-end guys will, do well at hiding that or keeping their butt end on the ground as long as they can, but really for this level and at the higher levels, the butt end is a real determinant of where the face-off's going to go, okay? So if my opponent's over here, his butt end's over here, I want to come in, helmet to his belly button, and naturally at some point, unless he's flicking it between his legs, he's going to have to pick his hands up, right? Because what did we just talk about with that third move? When I clamp, belly button, I'm here, look at my stick, right? So what I want to do, really the first most basic counter, which is a shovel counter, is I'm coming getting my belly button to his helmet, I'm connecting right here on his hand and lifting up, okay? Or sweeping, okay? See, the biggest thing that I see that makes a successful or an unsuccessful counter, first of all, closing space, right? I don't want to be countering from back here. I want to get up in his grill. Second thing is when guys just like slap the guy's hands or sweep or just kind of check, you want to lift up his hands, right? You almost want to lock in on his wrist and pull up. Okay, that really gets the ball to pop out, and then you kind of drive through, all right? That's really the most basic counter. And you can go online, you'll have my number after if you want to work on, some people will take the butt end, lift the butt end up, that's a little bit more advanced. Guys will come around the back side of the glove, that's a little bit more advanced. I would just say this, right? Once you've lost it, shift weight, match, belly button to helmet, wrist on wrist, lift up, drive through. Close space, wrist, lift up, drive through. Any questions on the counter? That's the shovel counter. Okay. We'll go rakes, and then we'll go quick ground ball play, wing play, open it up for questions, let you guys get out of here. Awesome, okay. So, when we talked about clamping the ball, I said the most important part is getting our top edge to beat our opponents. Okay, if we're losing that top edge battle all day, we got to do something else. One thing would be to counter. Another thing would be to use the bottom rail. So that's a rake. A rake is really utilizing the bottom rail to either catch a piece of the ball or catch a piece of the opponent's stick. Okay? So when we talked about getting our hand to rotate down, now I want to get my hand to rotate up and get that bottom rail to catch a piece of the ball or catch a piece of his stick. And the way that that can happen is just think about it, right? This is my opponent's stick and this is mine. If I clamp and he goes with his bottom rail, I clamp on top of his rail, right? The ball's somewhere lodged in between there. Now, if I beat him to the spot with my bottom rail, which sometimes can be, it's like throwing a changeup, right? Except you still got to be fast, okay? But it's like a changeup. All of a sudden the guy's saying, oh shoot, wait a second. This guy's not clamping the ball. He just caught a piece of my top rail with his bottom rail. Like, he doesn't know what to think, right? One thing you'll realize as you get into the higher levels, the face-off, you got to be ready to go on the whistle, okay? So if he's expecting something, and all of a sudden you throw a changeup at him, he's completely thrown off guard, and then he goes out for the next face-off, he's thinking, well, wait a second, he's going to clamp, he's going to rake, he's going to counter me, well, what's he going to do? Then he's slower, okay? It really becomes kind of a little bit of a chess match. And I know we're still working at the middle school level, but at the same time, that can throw off the player as well, and, can kind of even the match a little bit, as we said, if you're losing. So, what I'm working on here with my bottom edge with the rake, it still is the same concept. I got to drive down the line a little bit, but instead of rotating my hands over, I'm changing my grip up a little bit and getting the stick to come backwards. Okay, see how it's more on my fingertips? Previously, it's my palm, it's rotating down, right? Now it's in my fingertips a little bit, and I'm driving in and then peeling out, okay? I'm either going to catch a piece of the ball, or I'm going to catch a piece of his stick. I'm either going to catch a piece of the ball and rip it out, or I'm going to catch on top of his stick. Then I have leverage, and I can almost, bicep curl his stick up and out, and the ball will just squirt out that way, okay? Benefits to the rake, it's a change up. Maybe if you're losing the top edge battle, you win the bottom edge battle. Only downsides, you have less control. You don't know where that ball is going to squirt out, okay? But I would tell your players as well, if that rake doesn't work, well, now he's got to come down that line a little bit more. His hands are away from his body. I mean, that's the best way to counter someone. So, quick rake, bottom edge, shift over, counter, okay? So, talked about bottom edge with the rake. The only last thing I would say, not to overcomplicate things, but try to keep that left hand on the ground, right? Keep that left hand on the ground because the more I pick it up, see how I lose that surface area of the stick? I gotta catch his bottom edge with that, his top edge, with my bottom edge. If I pick my stick up and rake, it's not as effective, right? So let's keep that bottom edge low, rake, peel out, get into a counter, all right? That pretty much explains the rake. Any questions on that? All right, so we'll finish up with ground ball play, and I'll give you a couple quick drills, and then we'll get out of here. Questions, and we'll get out of here.
If your plan is to rake, you're gonna tell your wing
Yeah,
that that's what you're doing, right?
yep,
It's like, I'm gonna say, I'm clamping this time, so I'm on it, versus I'm gonna rake, and my plan is to rake to you. So that they're ready anyway, but you kinda wanna give them a heads up on what your approach is, right?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we could go into wing play all day and really get into the nuts and bolts and the nitty gritty. I'd say the biggest thing, right, is communication. You'll start to see trends as the game go along. Hey, I can stop this guy from going back, from going forward. LSM, you got to stop him from once he does that spin around and goes out the back, you got to be there to check. Right? Those are kind of coaching things that you guys are smart enough to intuitively kind of pick up. I'll give you some basics in a sec that you can really just put into place, but those are kind of things you can see, just basic sports as you kind of go on. But exactly, I think communication will be a huge part of it. And biggest thing too, if you're successfully raking, that ball 90% of the time squirting out forward and left, right, at 10 o'clock. Got it? Good question though. So finishing up with ground balls, I'd say the biggest thing that I say with face-off guys is a 3-on-3 ground ball. 5 minutes? Awesome. Biggest thing is the 3-on-3 ground ball, okay? Doesn't matter how you get the ball as long as you get it. Secure possession, right? If I don't have a disadvantage to that ball, I want to get as many checks, stick on hands as I can. If I have a disadvantage to the ball, keep the ball loose as long as we can, make it a 3-on-3 ground ball. With wing play, right? If we're doing a great job at the face-off with the clamp, our guys having a great day, I'm telling my wings to box out and give me space. Box out and give me space, let me operate, I'm doing well. If I'm losing, right, then it becomes a little bit more of a chess match. Coach says, well, wait a second, ball keeps squirting out here, ball squirting out there. Let's try to say, hey, face-off guy, can you stop the forward exit? Tie him up for 2 seconds, make him go backwards, and we'll have our LSM come right in and, get a check in and go from there. Real quick, I just want to touch on some drills. I'd say probably the most important drills you can do, first of all, are live reps. Right? I wish I had some secret formula. I think there's many ways you can build fundamentals, but live reps with another face-off guy. I think it's valuable to start off working, on air, a 1-on-0, right? No opponent, clamping over the ball, getting that ball to hit the ball stop, driving down the line, doing all the things we're talking about. Biggest thing is live reps against an opponent. Hopefully you guys got 2 face-off guys, maybe a kid in a younger class that, if you're doing 7th and 8th grade, the 7th and 8th grade kids can pair up. You got to have an opponent to go against. It's kind of, relatively in your skill set. It doesn't have to be apples to apples. Got to learn to lose, got to learn to win. You'll pick things up, you'll match speed. The only other thing I'd say is a really valuable drill is called 5100s, okay? So 5100s, if I have a ball here, I'm half clamping over the ball, so my top edge is touching that ball in the middle of the stick, and I have probably on a scale of 1 to 10 a pressure of 3 or 4, most likely 3, okay? So my stick's just kind of resting with a little bit of pressure on the ball, right? That's what my buddy's doing. He's not doing anything. That ball's just going to stay there, and I'm going to clamp into that ball that my buddy has his top rail on, okay? It's a really visual drill. What we can see is, once again, if the ball's in the middle of the stick, and I clamp over it, and it doesn't hit the ball stop, bang, what did you not do? Drive down the line enough. You rotate down and miss the ball, bang, what did you do? You didn't drive into the neutral column enough. The last one would be, is if you punch in, and your top edge doesn't slip under his, what did you not do? Rotate your hands down, okay? So 5100, your opponent, he's not doing anything besides just clamping the ball, light pressure, right? It stays on the ground like this, right? I come down, he's got it right there, clamp, drive in, right? Pinch up, go. Got it? Okay, any questions? We've got about 3 minutes. Anything that I didn't touch upon that you want me to go back over?
Any recommendations for sticks? I know kids always bring a second stick. They all have their opinion on what works best.
Thank you. I would have forgotten. Great point. As you get up into the higher levels, guys have, I like this stick bends this way, this stick bends this way. My recommendation, and they're not paying me to say this, I used the STX one in college. That was my favorite one, the STX Dual. The String King Mark IIF, the String King Mark IIF, and I say that because I think it's a real disservice to your players to make them into Fogos in middle school. They want to train outside of practice. They want to go to clinics at Face Off Factory. They want to train with Joe. That's great. I think you got to learn to be a lacrosse player. You want to make it to the higher levels. You can't handle the ball. You can't pass. You can't score. That's not me just preaching, what every mainstream guy says. I'm saying it because I've seen it. Guys won't play because they can't, they can win every clamp, but then they get jumped, double teamed, can't get the ball, right? And maybe, obviously, a lot of these players, their aspirations aren't to go to college, but even at the high school level, right? You have to be able to play lacrosse. And the reason why I say the Mark IIF is so great is because it bends back, in layman's terms, it bends back into its shape pretty easily. You can play with it like it's a regular field stick and really have no problem. So I think it's the best of both worlds, where it's a great face-off stick. A ton of guys who are Fogos specialists in colleges use that, the String King Mark IIF, but you can also play field with it, bends back into shape. So I think that would be my recommendation for this age. No-brainer that you can play field with it, you can face off with it, it's great.
What's your take on their little shaft modification, the String King one?
Yeah, I've seen that one. I don't think it's a great product personally. He's referencing String King designed this shaft that they thought was going to help clamp the ball. I think especially now that they've changed it to neutral grip, I never saw any value in it. Even when it was knee down, I don't see any value in it now. I think the head's great. I would just use any random little shaft. One that's light, one that's quick.
The bottom rail.
Yep, the rake.
That was great. Do you ever find that the jam, is that ever effective, or is that just so low percentage, like you're better off just, if you're getting beat, trying something else rather than trying to jam the top edge?
Yep.
Is that just too low percentage?
Yeah. So I'd say this. Once again, I'm speaking to coaches that are doing 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. But my experience in college, and I think this is the right way to face off. I don't think anyone jammed me ever in college. I think it's an outdated move. The jam was a move where you'd come right and you'd use the actual stick to hit the top edge of your opponents and go over the ball. That was pretty popular in the mid 2000s, 2010s. I don't see that at all anymore. Not to date you guys, but the jam, exactly, the jam, the jump. I don't see a lot of value to it. I really don't. I think you get the same outcome doing a rake, doing a counter, and I think it builds better fundamentals. I think, as I said, lift the other stick up, yeah. So there's a lot of, over the years, there's been a number of different moves. I'd say, I think there's a reason, I know, as I said, I know I'm speaking to middle school coaches, but I think there's a reason that those moves really are, I never saw them in college. I don't see them that often when I watch film and all that stuff, so. Absolutely. All right.
Shooters on your stick? Just get in the way of...
I was always a no shooting string guy. I've seen guys play with one shooting string. Sometimes it gets caught in the opponents and it yanks and then it tightens up the stick and the kid's like, wait a second, I can't throw. So
plus you're having the knot there too, so it's adding more distance to where you want to be under the ball.
Right. So I'd say if you're going to have a shooting string, cut it down pretty short, just because you don't want to get caught in your opponent's stick and then you gotta be messing around with that on the sideline. But another good question. That's all preference. I've seen guys play the shooting
Same thing stringing. You like most of the kids, they're going to be playing both ways.
Yep.
They're going to be playing midfield. Do you have them string an offense or a face-off pocket? Do you have them normally just use a regular pocket? Like, how do you have them do that if they're going to play?
Yeah, the ones that are factory strong for the String King, I think, are solid enough. I mean, this one's strung a little bit unique on the outside of the sidewall. Once again, I think this is probably above the pay grade of middle school. I would say that you can string a pretty normal pocket with that String King stick. It's not going to get stuck in the stick. You're going to be able to throw and catch really great, just like a field stick. You can get through an entire game plan just field alone with the stick and the stringing that I just referenced, the Mark IIF. So I wouldn't put too much thought into it. The only thing I'd say is that I do think soft mesh for face-offs is definitely better. just picking up ground balls and stuff like that. But I think the soft mesh nowadays it's like a hybrid soft,
Like
semi-soft. So it's not like the old stuff that was like, butter. It's pretty functional to play offense and defense and everything. Awesome. I think Lars is we have a Face-Off Factory presentation that we'll send around. This is gonna be on YouTube. I think I have Lars ask for my number. Happy to help out. I think it's great what you guys are doing. Like I think it's really valuable for someone like myself who went up through the Massachusetts Youth Lax. Like those are the best moments playing in the youth levels. So I mean, keep doing what you guys are doing. It's great that you guys are giving back. Certainly makes a positive impact on some younger kids. I feel like the most valuable lessons that I learned growing up playing sports. I'm sure it's the same with you guys. And good luck this year.
Thank you. Good luck to you.
Guys, you can go grab your badges at those tables you signed in at.
Different head.